Welcome to Campsite 6. We have the best episode ever. The People Under the Stairs. Wow, what a movie. We talk about a nesting doll of social ills and concerns, including child exploitation, idealized family structures, social isolation of a child, inbred families, fantasy life of isolated home, and infantile adult relationships. You're going to love this episode. Here it comes.
Hello, John? John?
Brian, how's it going?
It's going well. How'd you sleep?
I had what felt like a fever dream as it related to a strange family in a home and the randomness that goes along with such a family. It was quite bizarre.
Oh my gosh, that reminds me of a movie that I recently saw.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
How about I give you a little review and you try to guess it. This director has been directing downhill since his terror triptych of Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, and the original Nightmare on Elm Street. So it's hardly surprising that he hits bottom with this movie. For one thing, the preview promises more than the director can deliver. In fact, that's all he delivers. Those people under the stairs, they hardly figure, and they scarcely scare.
Well, that reviewer has left out a movie called Swamp Thing, which was also within that queue. But
on the downhill slope to this movie?
That's post Hills Have Eyes and pre Nightmare on Elm Street. And, well, just saying.
Oh, seems you know who I'm talking about. Second review. This movie is about a house of horrors that includes cannibalism and the main evil actor cavorting around in a leather suit, as well as a blood-crazed Rottweiler. However, these cartoonish villains quickly thaw the picture's initial chill, and in the process trivialize the more serious issues like child abuse and poverty that might have been raised.
So, thinking that there is a potential for a more serious conversation around social ills that was missed.
This movie does get at some potential social ills, yeah. The last one, kind of talking about how it fits in the horror genre. This movie is filled with diverse, bizarre elements that bring many horror subgenres into one excellent, spooky mix. There are plenty of traditional slasher elements with incredibly gory moments and jump scares. The film brings in elements of a psychological thriller in that the main characters, the two evil people, are extremely emotionally abusive, they're cannibalistic, and they're racist. The stair people trapped in the basement are almost undead, which harkens to the zombie thriller genre. So slasher elements, gore, jump scares, psychological thrilling, cannibalism, zombies. This movie has it all for horror subgenres. Ticking all the boxes.
No real opinion on the film, though.
No, just a statement about its contents.
Just an inventory.
Right. Well, you know how these reviewers are. Got a guess?
I do. Is it Those Under the Stairs?
No, you're close. It's called The People Under the Stairs.
Oh, yeah. Right.
But they really weren't just under the stairs. They were more. It was more the people, kind of behind the cabinets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People in the substructure of the house is how I would have titled this film. They could also just pounce out of any kitchen cabinet seemingly at random. They were in the air vents, the attic, the chimneys. They were. There's a lot of real estate in a big house like this that you wouldn't think of as inhabitable.
I would agree, but I also don't want to discredit the agility and ability of one of the characters, Roach. He and Alice are the two characters that navigate through the walls, and there's a population of unnamed and relatively unidentified children who are in the basement who don't seem to have that ability to figure out how to navigate the ins and outs of the house.
The two ne'er-do-wells their names are man and woman, correct? But they call each other like father and mother as well?
The two parents that live in the home, yeah, they refer to themselves as maybe mommy and daddy or mom and dad. They don't really have a title other than that.
Alice is their daughter, and Alice, she's never left the house before, never allowed to leave. What's their goal? They're trying to raise like a perfect male child, right? Is Alice, like, they've got Alice, that box is checked. They've got a perfect little daughter. They're looking for a perfect little boy, son.
Yeah, I think they're trying to fill out the perfect son, perfect daughter dynamic. And it appears that Alice isn't actually their kid. I don't know if they kidnapped Alice, which might make sense because both mommy and daddy are brother and sister. So they are an incestuous family. And so I doubt they could even have kids.
So what was wrong with Roach?
Roach was a boy that they captured, and he tried to escape by yelling or alerting others, and so they cut his tongue out, and then he either escaped or was banished to the basement.
And all the others living in the substructure of the house are a combination of neighborhood children, delivery men, Uber Eats delivery, EPS guys, meter readers. Anyone who comes into the house has to be, they cut off their tongues, right? And then they chuck them in the basement under the stairs.
I don't know if they cut off everyone's tongue. It'd be my guess, and this wasn't fully explained, is that those that come to read the meters are food, and the ones that are locked up are the failed children, because they're trying to find the perfect son and daughter.
So I get you.
In the beginning of the movie, there's these two individuals who are robbing the house, and one of them goes in under the guise of a meter reader, and later it's found that he is in a pit, and one of the children is eating his hand.
So into this mix comes a young child named Fool, nicknamed Fool, and the movie starts with a reference to tarot cards. Fool is the son of a poor single mom, I think, who has cancer. He gets wrapped up in a scheme to rob this house with some friends of the family, tries to get inside the house disguised as a Boy Scout to sort of figure out whether they have an alarm system or anything. What happens from there? He gets trapped, doesn't he, in the house?
The two robbers go in. First one goes in. He's pretending to be a meter man. He is killed. Then Fool and the other adult male go in with the idea that this meter man is robbing this family blind, and they feel that the meter man is taking the loot for himself. Later, they find out that the meter man was killed, and then Vin Rames is also killed. Then the Fool is stuck in the house, escapes, climax of the movie at that point, or a turn point, and Fool goes home, brings with him some riches from the home, then has a hero's journey pivot where then he voluntarily goes back into the home in the attempt to rescue Alice, which is the trapped daughter. He, Home Alone style, triumphs over the mommy and daddy character, releases all the children. So he is the hero in this tale, and also distributes the money that has been hoarded by this mommy and daddy character, or duo.
Yeah, the man and woman are big into real estate. They own the apartment complex where Roach and his ailing mother live, and they've been driving up the rent exorbitantly. There's suspicions that they have a hoard of gold and buried money, and that's the original impetus to enter the house, is to rob from the moneyed class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they used to have a undertaking business, so they would sell coffins to the community and then pivoted into real estate. Yeah.
Fool is black. There's elements of exploitation, white property class exploiting African American renting poor people.
There is a huge section here of exploitive capitalism that kind of runs through the movie, yeah. And there's a racial element, and the family appears to be racist, yeah.
I guess my question about that theme is why the exploited black community, or I guess just the family here, resorts to robbery rather than, say, what other avenues might they have?
Yeah, so this is a big topic because it fits within the movie, it fits within society. This movie is intending to reflect society within itself. Although it is a horror movie and it has its own plot elements, it obviously is trying to have a social commentary as it relates to capitalism, America, urban development such as that. I was actually reading a book about the 50s and 60s, and it was talking about setting a wage, an hourly wage, and employers would consider a wage that would include theft. So if it was a job that would pay $2 an hour, but there was suspicious that the employee, the one who was employed, would be stealing at a certain rate, they would pay them less to include the theft of property. So if it was a truly $2 a rate job, then they would pay $1 an hour with the assumption that they would lose $1 an hour in theft. And so this is a artifact maybe of that time period or exploitive capitalism, that the individuals who are being provided the opportunity to have a job, there's an element of you have to build in the fact that they're going to try and steal or they're going to try and get back something from the system. I don't know if that was the point in this movie, was to suggest that they're going to go rob the exploitive landlords, and that was an actual social concern, or if it was just a plot element. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess there's a Robin Hood aspect to it, stealing from the rich in order to achieve equitable transference of wealth and justice, and because poor mom can't afford what sounds like a relatively simple cancer treatment. They just don't have the money for it. So the turn towards theft of such an evil, avaricious landlord doesn't seem so bad.
There's probably two categories within this movie that I think capture most of everything. There's the idealized family structure category, which I can list off the things that fit within that, and the exploitive capitalism category. So within the idealized family structures, you have child exploitation. So the mommy and daddy exploiting children to create this image of the perfect family. There's the social isolation of a child that would go along with this process. So the children in the basement and Alice who's in her room and can't leave. There's the inbred family. I don't know how much of that is because the sister and brother felt that the purity of the family is more important than breeding with others, or if they were just so isolated that they didn't have the opportunity to meet other people. Not sure, but there's a purity element there. Fantasy of isolated home. This gets into the part where daddy is running around in full leathers and the mommy or mom is complimenting him and looking at him lovingly and has this, he's fulfilling a role there of home protector, corralling of children, disciplinary, and then the mother is kind of filling this role of supportive, loving wife. And so there's this idealized fantasy life of isolated home. And then that kind of cascades into some level of child sexual abuse. There's a scene where the daddy in full leathers is coming up and Alice is hiding behind a wall. And as he approaches Alice, he mentions something slightly sexual and kind of touches his crotch. So there's this suggestion that he's been sexually exploiting their child, Alice. So there's a bunch of stuff within that idealized family structure. And then there's the exploitive capitalism piece. This blind wealth generation, there's a whole pile of money in the basement, and they don't even care about it. They're not even living in a way that shows that they care about money. All they care about is getting money and preventing others from having it. What they do with it is irrelevant. There's no, I will take this money and trickle down through the economy and provide jobs for people, or I will invest in other things. I just want to keep it for myself and remove it from other people. And housing is a particular element where this works well. And I would suggest in a political realm is probably the few areas where there's a needed good that limits the access to others. I see that as the same as bread. I can't live without a house. I mean, one could be homeless, and if this gets pulled into a market where those are investing, trading, making money off of a needed resource, then there's going to be a removal of that resource to others if they don't have wealth. Food, I would put in the same category, isn't traded in the same way. Everyone makes this assumption that people need food, and there isn't as much of a, I will try and invest in bread and try and collect as much bread from the community and then resell this bread at a rented rate, kind of using the association of housing. The fact that Wes Craven chose the pivoting point into real estate, I think was intentional, because I think that that's unfortunately one of the bigger problems within exploitive capitalism that rises to the surface is I will take a commodity that is needed for people. I will try and collect as much as I can and then sell it back at a rate at which I profit from something that you need.
So both a economic message in this movie as well as a critique of traditional male-dominated or at least parent-dominated family structures.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a family structure in which parents aren't kind of the head of the household.
No, but there's several references to the hear no evil, see no evil.
Right.
And the daughter is admonished only to speak when spoken to. So kind of depriving children of a kind of family role.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, that was a big theme where children are to be seen and not heard.
And not even seen if they're all locked. The imperfect versions of children are locked away in the basement.
Yeah, good point.
So what's the goal of these two, mom and dad? What is their ultimate objective? Just to hoard money and keep everyone else out of their house and then die? Or does this movie, that question is what's the ultimate objective for these two? Staying on the family side for a second.
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. I would guess that the current goal is to find perfect children, a perfect son, a perfect daughter. Where that goes is difficult to tell because the end goal of having a perfect son and a perfect daughter is for them to go out into the world and be successful, for them to find a partner, for them to find a job, for them to invest in themselves and show a sense of independence, maybe, although that could be a more Western tradition. And in this household, they're not allowed to leave. So speculating as to why you would even need a daughter or a son is difficult to know.
Presumably they want someone to carry on their lifestyle, because weren't they, mom and dad themselves, a product of incest and several generations into practices that had been going on for a considerable time?
Yeah, I think that is true. That makes sense, where they came from a family in which incest was assumed or expected, or at least that's how it concluded. And so they're, as with any family to a degree, inheriting those traits or inheriting those behaviors and replicating them. Their awareness of it is unknown. Maybe they're doing this intentionally, or maybe there was an impression that was placed on them that this is how life should be, and they're doing it unknowingly.
So the children, Roach and Alice and Fool, they do have agency in this movie. It grows as Fool's attempts to escape take shape. Roach plays a part, and Alice as well starts to play more of a helping role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they kind of start to break out of their isolated structure and advocate for self and act within world and see their behaviors as productive, and it probably has a reinforcing agent to it. What did you think about this movie? I feel like you're holding back a little bit. There's like this speculation or overview, but I don't get a sense of your like or dislike or thoughts about it in itself.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of weird horror movie elements in the house itself that, yeah, I get that there's this critique of hoarding money and a Robin Hood element to it, but the goals of the man and woman weren't clear to me, and the community action that shows up at the end where all the poor rent payers are gathering outside the building. There wasn't sort of a sense that the whole community had an awareness of this guy being the villain or anything like that. So just sort of elements like that didn't feel well done to me. It's incongruous to have a message about white family structures and people being threatened by that, sort of changing with the times, and exploitative capitalism and gentrification and all this. It's incongruous to have those elements next to what predominates in the film, which is silly gore and guy running around in a suit and a leather suit and just not very scary horror elements. I don't know. It's too much, trying to do too much, I guess, for me to see those elements and view them as being, trying to take them seriously or trying to read something into what this movie's trying to say about them.
This movie reminded me of Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. There's a family element here that kind of mirrors that movie, or I don't know if it mirrors or if it just kind of feels similar, where it's this perverted exaggeration of a family that is clearly dysfunctional, but within itself seems to function. Those in the family, in this particular movie, the children, obviously, I wouldn't put them within the family. So I see this family unit as just mommy and daddy, and then everything else is in that orbit. And so between mommy and daddy, everything's great. They've developed in the way that they think is appropriate. They don't see any weirdness between the two of them. They're very loving. And the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: Next Generation's sort of the same thing. Like there's this connected family that is quite bizarre, but functions within themselves in a way that I think each person would see as normal.
So the thing that Texas Chainsaw Massacre and this have in common is the danger, the fear that behaviors that are really abnormal can feel normalized if a family supports them and encourages them. So we need to, it's about, I guess, maturation and becoming an independent person outside of the family and letting society influence us a lot to correct some of those familial warpings. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Is there something terrifying about the effect of a family dynamic in isolation without any societal leveling?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily put that as a horror element or a terrifying element. I think that's the truth. A family does need to interact with the world around them because it's as important to their environment as the family itself. Each family has its own unusual elements. And so this is a magnification or exaggeration of that. Family in isolation can come up with their own ways of how they should operate. And without them interacting with the society at large, that can go sideways and be exaggerated to a point of, well, I think in this it's pretty absurd, but still within the realm of believability to a degree.
So just to follow on that, if mom and dad and Allison Roach are the bad paradigmatic family, then the obvious foil to that would be Fool and Leroy, I think was his name, and mom. What aspects of positive family structure, if any, do they present as a foil to this psychotic family?
Within the Fool family, there is a sense of mutual support. There is we will get through difficult times together. I don't know if there is something that's being injected into the mommy-daddy family that is a curative element in a sense. Fool comes in as a catalyst or an influencing element. The only thing I can see is the hero's journey that he has that brings him to that. So that develops his sense of masculinity or independence. That was kind of a thread through his character. There isn't necessarily a correcting agent that Fool comes in and then the mommy and daddy element learn from Fool and then they go on and create a more healthy or better influenced family structure. Fool just kind of comes in and literally blows it up with a stick of dynamite and then eliminates that family from existence.
Yeah, and then all the gold is collected by the oppressed tenants. Is that right?
Yeah, so it kind of just gets dispersed back into the community.
and that solves the economic exploitation theme.
That's assumed that once the money is then redistributed into the community, then the poverty struggle would go away. What about Home Alone? How does this how does this remind you of Home Alone? You got Kevin McAllister, that's his name. Where how does he look in comparison to Fool?
Home Alone is about a kid who has to fight off two robbers and sets all sorts of booby traps for them, and
Well, maybe they're impoverished and they're trying to kind of get a shoe in into the wealth that the McAllister family has acquired. I mean, that's a huge family. They must have a ton of money if they have so many kids.
yeah, that they can just
And they're
forget what-
traveling for Christmas.
and
Get
not
out of
even-
town.
Yeah, they got kids to spare. And I mean, Macaulay Culkin was maltreated, I believe, in the movie. No, I mean, yeah, I don't propose to mount a complex argument for why. Just the fact that it was basically a big chase scene around the house, and there were some goofy comedic elements. I thought, obviously, Home Alone doesn't have any gore or zombies or people living under the stairs, but there were resonances of Home Alone in the sense that surprises around every quarter, I guess, in terms of the architecture of a house and all the different traps that he devises, and the hunt aspect of it throughout the house just struck a chord.
No, I think that there's a lot of similarities. You have two robbers coming into a house of wealth with intention of leveraging and redistributing this wealth to themselves. And they've obviously been disenfranchised, much like the two robbers coming into the People Under the Stairs house. Macaulay Culkin is essentially mommy and daddy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who does he exploit?
You have Kevin, who's sitting on a ton of wealth. He's just enjoying it by himself, you know?
Yeah.
These two criminals are just, well, I wouldn't even call them criminals. These disenfranchised individuals are just trying to experience a thread of what Kevin has. And Kevin is just knocking them over the head, just straight punishing these guys. And all they want is to just have a little sense of what it would be like to have stability, have a sense of economic freedom.
Home Alone is a coming of age story, which maybe People Under the Stairs is as well.
It's especially for Fool. I mean, he is kind of developing his own character, trying to find out how it is to be a man. Kevin is shaving, his first attempt at shaving.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Didn't go well, did it?
He had trouble just finding food. And there's an element where Kevin leaves the house and seeks counsel from the church.
Mm-hmm.
And through that is supported, much like Fool is from his family.
Was Wes Craven a consultant on Home Alone? Do you know?
Maybe he might have been. Let me check the details. This feels a little bit like Return of the Living Dead 2 in its appeal to children. Maybe that's what Wes Craven was moving into, is this Goonies type adventure, much like Return of the Living Dead 2, where the lead is a child. As a 13-year-old or 12-year-old, I could easily relate to Fool in the sense that he's of my age and is seeking adventure, but also is at a point of development and intimidated and has to build the courage up to go into the basement. So this could be a movie like The Gate, movie like Return of the Living Dead 2. Maybe it's within that category, although it does have a lot of adult themes as it relates to exploitation. But
we feel like we've talked previously about movies that center around a child, and I didn't really realize that about this one, but it does center around Fool and his journey, and also Alice, obviously, as well as a big main character, and the dog as a primary villain for much of the movie. That's also congruous with a child's fears and so on, and sort of overreactive parents maybe being a naturally terrifying thing, like a loud father or a overly judgmental mother. Those childlike fears are given a lot of room to roam in this movie.
from a child's perspective, I could be in a family in which I can't have a voice. I can't speak. I can't do anything. I can't be my own person. What's worse than that, I could be in the basement. I could be eating other humans just to stay alive. How terrifying is that? And so there's this hell component that might elicit a sense of fear within a child. Then you have this main character come in at age 10, 12, maybe 13. He's the hero. He conquers the parents, upends the tyranny of these parents, and saves the neighborhood. Well, he's completed the hero's journey. And so how satisfying is that for a child? So maybe you could place this within a Disney element where you could take your kid to this movie. And there's an adult narrative here too, where I'm an adult. I'm just trying to take care of my kids, and owning a house is expensive. And I can see these exploitive elements and I can appreciate those. So this feels much like the Disney of horror.
Are you saying that People Under the Stairs is the perfect family movie?
I'm saying that, yes, this is the perfect 1991. Take your kids, take your family, and view this beautiful The People Under the Stairs.
Take the kids. Bring the whole family. Little matinee viewing, some ice cream afterwards. A big family talk about idealized family structures and exploitative capitalism. I think it could be a Saturday.
This was our own little hero's journey, wasn't it, Brian?
It was. I felt trapped at times, and I felt like my tongue got cut out, but we made it through, and we blew up the house. Yeah,
we did. We will distribute this episode.
The community is gathering outside and demanding it. Yeah, this is a weird movie. I have not seen any of Wes Craven's other work. You're right, definitely right about the two big planks there in terms of really serious themes that in my mind just they sort of stay outside the house somehow, and the bulk of the movie, 90% of the movie, is a chase scene around the house with these larger elements serving as some kind of guardrails on the side, but no deep dive into them in the actual dialogue and movement of the characters.
Well, we will at some point poke more into Wes Craven and his...
Yeah, I look forward to it.
...into his movies. And, Till next time.
Till next time.